So one question I get often, and I feel like you're the perfect person to ask, no pressure, but how do you get to the place of acceptance, but you're not settling? So you're still pushing and advocating for growth and milestones in your child, but you're not in that striving, fix-it, denial phase.
Well, it's a really good question. I think it's very individual again, but it could be a very good sign. It could mean that you are at the place, sorry, I have a cold. It could mean that you're at the place where you can let up the brake a little bit, and that feels good for you. So I've come across different types of parents. Some parents really remain very strong on the advocacy front, and they found foundations, and they participate in things, and they speak, and they write books. That is one route to go. But I've come across other parents that say, I am thrilled with what I did with my child, but now I want to sit in my easy chair and just chill. And I really need to give myself permission to not be on that route, that special need route, longer than I have to. And that's really okay. I mean, at some point, you do the job to the point where you feel you've done it, and you let the little birdie fly, still staying vigilant. But it's very important that some parents become too enmeshed and to recognize that it's time to take off the lid a little bit. So the example I give is the little child that can't quite button their overalls at 2. But by 4 or 5, you step back and go, this is a very simplistic example, but it'll take them a little longer, but let them button their overalls by themselves. Let's see if they can. So it's an area of curiosity. What happens if I step back and don't call school all week to check on him? What would happen? What would happen if I don't check their work bag tonight? What would happen? And slowly you can find a path, I hope this is true, to let things settle eventually into a place where you can choose how you want to rise, what your next chapter is going to be for your personal life. So something I feel very strongly about is that our lifespans as humans have greatly expanded, thank God, in this past century, and that our period of parenting, I wouldn't say it's finite because we remain parents forever, and certainly with children with special needs, we do remain parents for either much longer than we ever thought, or this is what we need to do. But at some point, and not immediately, but at some point there is room for your next chapter.
It's so hard to see that though.
But don't put pressure. Don't put pressure on yourself. Just I'm planting the possibility that it exists. That if you've always wanted to take an art class, maybe in a few years you'll be able to do that. But there is a road ahead that includes both your child with you, but also your own as a parent role. And certainly if you're in a committed relationship, that may need a little replenishing along the way. So when you're not busy buttoning Tommy's overalls, you can, give your hubby a little, for that. And spend time on that weekly date or whatever. And if that idea is abhorrent to you, like where would I find time? You don't have the time right now, it's okay. Make it okay.
I think, I'm relatively new to this journey, but just building off of that question about kind of finding that sweet spot between acceptance, but also, still continuing to try and try new things and advocate for your child. For me, I try to think of it as like I forget the name of the author, but there's a book about the carpenter versus the gardener in terms of parenting. And I think for special needs parents, the tendency is to want to be the carpenter, to be like, we are going to get the IEP perfect, and we're going to do this, and we're going to, get the right specialist for this. And I think, I've tried to take more of the gardener approach, provide opportunity, build the relationships with the medical team, work with different people, try to, do what's within your control, but you don't control the outcome. You know, for me, and I think that for me has been a huge weight off. You know, I do what I can every day, and I try to build systems in so that other people can take over when I just can't. Or like I'm here in LA today, there's systems in place that both of my kids are getting what they need with great caregivers that are fresh. But at the same time, you know, it's not my responsibility it's my responsibility to provide the opportunity. How they turn out is sort of up to them. You know, you can do as much as you can environmentally to move them along, but on some level, I mean, you know, you're probably, I don't know, you know, all of us are have their own unique gifts and weaknesses and all of that, and some of it's just who we are, you know, as people, and my kids are who they are, as well as both of yours, so.
I want to write that down because I think that's important for moms to hear. Because moms put so much pressure on themselves for the outcome. Typical neurotypical kids or special
needs moms do it to each other.
Yeah, and yes.
Oh, have you gone to see this specialist? Oh, have you tried this formula? Oh, have you done this new kind of therapy? You know, it gets competitive.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, it's life-changing. I mean, we have to, that's why it's so important to find your tribe. You can just be real. And, you know, I mean, especially in, I think, the community of parents on the autism spectrum, I mean, there's just so many of them, and there's so much competition and so many snake oil peddlers saying, oh, this diet is going to be the game changer, this type of therapy. And, you know, kids are really different. And what works for one kid's not necessarily going to work for another. And we have to give ourselves some grace to experiment, but also you don't have to try every single thing on the menu.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I always say don't turn your child into a lab rat.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I'm sure some parents aren't going to like that, but
I know.
But you know,
it's okay to experiment with certain things, but and fight for your child. I don't mean to take the back seat. I mean, if I got criticized for anything in my book, it's the section where I said, fight for your kid. If you don't like what the school district's doing, hire a lawyer. I'm sorry, I still stick to that. And, you know, fight for your kids. So, but at the same time, you literally cannot try everything out there.
If there's 10 interventions, maybe just focus on 1 or 2, right? Like, you're not a bad mom if you don't focus on the other 8. You know?
Yeah, choose your army. You're the general. Every atypical child, like, it takes a village. No.
Yes.
It takes an army.
Yes.
You are the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
And you choose your generals and your foot soldiers very carefully. And sometimes they evolve out of one treatment and need another treatment. So it's redesigning your army. But you have your system in place, but you're the officer-in-chief. You run the show.
Amen. And having that trust that when you can find, I mean, for us as a medical team and nurses, you know, you find those awesome people and you trust them and you work with them. And, you know, I think that's really important, is creating those good relationships. I think sometimes parents, when they're in such a fight mode, you know, all the time, and they're the only, it's like us against the world, you know, sometimes they forget that these doctors, these neuropsychologists, these, you know, teachers, like, they want to do good. You have to partner with them, and you have to, you know, build those relationships, because it's only going to pay dividends for your kid.
Absolutely. And my husband and I, we got that advice early on from being a part of the Proud to Release support group here in Southern California. And we heard from other parents, like, you don't go in with guns blaring, you go in with donuts or bagels, and you go in like, we are a team working on you know, this child's behalf. And I think that's a really important disposition to be in, and not to be in fight mode with guns blaring into every meeting or IEP, even the emergency IEPs.
You're not going to win any ground by being aggressive. Really, it's coming from your lower brain if you think about it. You know, these people have a lot, for the most part, the people you're working with have education. There is a standard of care. Maybe the standard of care is too low. Maybe it's not good enough for your child. I fully accept that. But
that happens.
For sure it happens, especially in the school system. There are holes in it, for sure.
For sure.
But if you do, you're, like you said, like, if you do approach a relationship like a relationship where there's give and take, and you're building the relationship, I find that like when I have had to ask for something or negotiate for something, I'm in a much better place than if I started out, sort of aggressive and sort of putting the other person on defense. So, now when I have an ask, it's, you can see them considering it and talking through it, and it's much more of a partnership. But I haven't done an IEP yet, only an IFSP, which I hear is a very different thing. So
it is a different. We've got lots of resources for
good.
you.
Another year.
My number one tip for IEPs is bring people with you.
Yes.
Don't ever show up. It seems really obvious, but don't show up to that IEP alone. Even if you can bring a neighbor.
Right.
Somebody.
Right. Absolutely.
Just, you really, because the initials alone will drive you crazy. All the little acronyms.
Oh my goodness, all the acronyms, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have Dr. Rita read, this is something I underlined, I love this piece, and so I won't even prep it, I'm going to just let you take over, because I just think this is such an important thing that you wrote about, and it's something that parents certainly grapple with. So.
Thank you. So I wrote about, it's in my acceptance chapter, which is actually called active acceptance. It's not just a passive idea, but it's called embracing the paradox. So acceptance doesn't mean that you're pleased about your child's condition. There is no contradiction between loving someone and feeling burdened, exhausted, angry, or burnt out. All parents confront that paradox. As a parent of an atypical child, you have even deeper contradictions to absorb. Fiercely loving your child, but absolutely hating what he or she has to endure or the changes that it thrusts upon you and your family. This is the basis of dialectical thinking, understanding that polar opposite feelings actually create a coherent and meaningful whole. There is light in every darkness and darkness in every light. You can embrace both joy and disappointment in one heart. You can actually carry around feelings of joy and sadness at the same time. It's one heart, and you can hold both. So I wish you all good luck in your journey and holding both feelings together in one heart. One heart.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure.
We absolutely have to have you back. My wheels are going. I've got ideas.
Great.
We would love for you to come back.
Love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Rita.